You're fine with more than $5 here.
Oh, wonders you do when you turn off lights. It really silences people. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Natalie Swachina. I'm the Associate Deputy Director here at the Houston Center for Contemporary Craft. Thank you for joining us today. This is our last resident artist talk for this cycle of residents, our 24-25 cycle. We just announced our new cycle. We just sent out a press release that Lorena Morales is here with us, will be one of our residents this fall. So come back and listen to Lorena this fall. I want to say thank you for you all to be here this afternoon. I know it's a little thundery and rainy, and it's wonderful that we can see some very colorful and wonderful art from our artists Dongyi and Macon today. So first up will be Dongyi Wu. And I should say both Macon and Dongyi will be here until the end of November, so you have tons of time to still capture them in their studios. So Dongyi is a Chinese-born contemporary jewelry artist who received her master's degree in metal and jewelry design from the Rochester Institute of Technology and her bachelor's degree in jewelry art design from the Beijing Institute of Fashion and Technology in China. She's recently completed her artist in residency at the University of Arkansas in Little Rock, Aramont School of Art and Crafts in Tennessee, and Contemporary Craft in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. Dongyi has exhibited worldwide, including SMUC in 2018 in Germany, Hoya 2020 in Spain, and 6 national and international solo exhibitions. Her work is carried by Metal Shop at Baltimore Jewelry Center in Baltimore, Equinox Jewelry Gallery in San Antonio, and Aramont Gallery in Knoxville, and the Silver Fern in Cooksville. Sorry, that's our HVAC. It's okay. It's the HVAC speaking. Yeah. Well, let me turn it over to Dongyi to start from here. Thank you, Dongyi. We will take some time for questions at the end.
Well, life always has some nice accidents. Yeah. Okay, so thanks very much for the introduction from Natalie, and also I really appreciate you guys be here to listen to my talk. So today, I'm going to talk about 3 projects I have been explored and developed during my residency program. Also, it will be unlike from all the previous artist talk I did. Like usually I was just followed by the timeline from the very first piece to the end. But today I will only focus on 3 projects because of, oh, okay. Yeah, so I will go really deep to talk about my work in process, like how I get inspired, improved all the details, and also like how I solve all the problems during my creation process. I titled my presentation as 0 to 1. That's because I feel like that represents the journey of taking an idea from nothing to something. Sometimes I feel like my artist improvement feels like not like artist process, it's more like scientific somehow. So that's the title, the meaning of the title. So if you want to know kind of like my journey, like in image, so that's the map of my journey. I was born and raised in like a small town in Mid-East of China. And then my family moved to the South area. Like both me and my family moved a lot. So then I moved to Beijing. It's a big city for me at that time. Like for my, like Natalie said, like for my bachelor degree in metal art design. and also like my dual degree in fashion design and engineering. My school in Beijing was one of the top fashion school in China, so I'm always combine those like metal experience and the fashion experience together to make my art. After I finished my study in Beijing, I made a really big decision that I moved to United States for pursuing my master degree at Rochester Institute of Technology, and I was still majoring in metal. After that, I like typically just started my residency lives and have been lots of places, and now I'm back to Texas. So that's by my journey. Okay. So next, I'm going to talk the first project I've been explored, and I call this Public Bus. This project came to me during the COVID time, actually. Not sure about like your COVID experience, but like I was live by myself in San Antonio, just by myself in a little house. I feel pretty lonely by that time. Every time I went back from home, I took a shower because someone told me like those hot waters can wash away the bacteria and the virus from your body. I still don't know if that was the truth, but I did that during the COVID time. But once when I took the shower, it just an idea came into my mind that it reminded me of the day when I went with my mom to go to the public bus in 90s of China. So that public bathroom was not fancy at all. It's just like a big room like this, and with all the water pipes around the wall. And then people just taking the showers, no private space. But you know what? So when I think about the public experience back to the 90s of China, it just feels so warm that you can get really close to another person. You don't need to keep like 6 feet distance from the other people. So that project is definitely like a nostalgic project, contrast with the social distance of the COVID time. So I've put 3 pictures here. It's kind of like speaks of the public bus house I had. I went with my mom like every week in China, because that public bus house was renovated from like a really big factory place. So the outside of the building almost feels like that way. It's really tall and covered with the red bricks. And the pipes feels pretty similar to this. It's very simple, just a water pipe, even don't have the actual shower head. So every time I start a project, I started like collect the photos on my Pinterest, and those are some like pictures I've been collected. So from this picture, you can kind of read the memories in my mind. So they are all comes in the orange and red colors, and then with some human body forms in there. So after this research, I put 4 keywords on my notebook. They are body movement, steam, dim lights in warm tones, and the industrial style. So I know those are the elements I will be focused on for my future creation. So I guess the body movement makes sense because that was a space filled with all the human bodies, and the steam came from the moistures in the public bath house. And dim lights was because of the kind of similar to this light here. It's like it's because it's yellow. So after the reflection from the steam, so make everything in the yellow and orange color. And the industrial style was come from the building. This project actually started when I was in Pittsburgh. I did the 1-month residency at Contemporary Craft in Pittsburgh, because Pittsburgh actually had a pretty nice like public library resources. So every weekend I went there, do the research. So I found out myself pretty inspired by those impressionist and the Fauvism paintings. And I like how the artists draw the figures and to represent the movement of human bodies. So then I had all the sketches to kind of represent the body's movement as my very first research. I'm still doing this research after I moved to Houston, and those are some sketches I did, like inspired by the permanent collection at MFH. Oh, sorry. Also, there was a pretty a painting inspired my creation a lot. There was a painting from the Carnegie Museum of Art. I really like the artist create all these various color blocks on the human skins. So they are not just the skin color, but you can also find those yellow, red, and pink colors on human skins. What I understand was that color blocks was because of the color reflection from the environment. So this picture really inspired me a lot for my creation because I was thinking I could add something like or another layer with colors above the main body of work to represent the warm tones in public bus. So that's what's the materials I collect. And also it's part of like my material exploration. I won't especially talk about this material because they're the bra extensions. I found this material, then I found the resin because they're really soft, feels like the texture of the skin. Also, they all comes with the skin colors. Also, like this is like part of the bra, and so it could add another layers of the intimacy to my piece. So I found this material is really great. So I made this first test piece, and it's really small, but I would say like this is a nice test for the material themselves. And the shape was for sure is inspired by the sketches I showed before. So after that, I created a series of sketches to explore the body movements in groups. So there are some samples I have here. So then I have this piece made by the end of the residency in Pittsburgh. Well, I would say this piece could be a pretty nice contemporary jewelry necklace, but when by that time I was like, this is like too safe for me. They are too beautiful, they are safe, but I always want to do something new and takes the risks. So I just put this piece, like this unfinished piece in a box. And then I was like waiting for half year, not touch this piece at all until I got the residency here. So like after I got this residency, the first project that I started was this public bus collection. And then I started research again. I find some new inspiration from Picasso's drawings. I really like him like draw these people's like the figures with like fluid lines. So if I guess you're all familiar with Picasso's drawings, sometimes you hard to read that's real figures, but you still can read the movement because of his lines. So I was really inspired by his drawings, and I was thinking about like if I can find some other material to just draw the outline of the human forms to represent the movement, and then make my piece both artistic and also functional. So that was some test piece I did, and this is just like I draw on my iPad, and that was the real piece. This piece was made from what we call the low carbon steel. That was different. The steel wire you got from Home Depot are lowers because that steel wire was not sealed with other alloy. So I can use the just bend, change the shape, soldered, but also keep the shape after hammering it. It could be really hard. Also, I did some more like tests about like the warm tone I was talking about. So now I call this filters. So it feels like a filters you put on your photos. Now you give the piece with like the warm tone that's similar to the memories I had for the public bus in 90s of China. So that was the first piece I made here in April. So you can see I was pretty satisfied with this piece, and then you can review this real piece in my studio. So this piece, after this piece was finished, I put this on my wall for a while. But I'm kind of like really like I'm always like finished piece. I'm not like put it into a box. I always like do like a self-critique by myself. I look at this piece and look at my concept. I was thinking about like people probably can read this to read the memories I had in 90 of China for the public bus house. But it's maybe a little hard to know like this original inspiration was related to the COVID time. So then I go to the next. I've been collecting the pictures, the weird pictures I took during the COVID time like this. So because I didn't draw my cup for so long, so the battery was totally died. So that was the picture from that time. So I was like, want to combine the old memories and the experience I had in COVID time together. So that was my next process. So because I was thinking like COVID time feels like shadow for us. Like we always want to forget something like the negative memories during the COVID time, but it's also still a part of our life experience. So it feels like shadows. So what I did was like I draw this outline, like I cut the images into the exactly shape to the body forms I made, and I sealed this picture with acrylic sheets, and I put the fabric piece on the front and the acrylic sheets at the back, so to create like a body and a shadow. So then I was thinking about like how it could be wearable, and then I was like put this like a circle, and that was the first sketch. I thought that was the end, but then I went to the manual collection and saw the untitled drawing from Cy Twombly, and I saw these circles. I know the circles he has like some other thoughts about it, but when I saw that the circle, this infinite circle, it reminds me of the COVID time. I feel like it's the bad experience never ended. So that inspired me a lot. So remember I put like the body under the shadow, like parallel way, but inspired by his painting, I do like an X, like in like this angle. So one followed by others feel like the infinite circle. It's maybe hard to understand, but like I have this video here. So this is like a test piece, so you can see how it works. I'm still like in process. I'm still cutting the acrylic sheets, so hopefully you will see the finished piece like in this coming months. So this is how this was connected and how it present the infinite circle on this piece. Oh, okay. So next project I'm going to talk about is called land brooches. It's a little bit complicated, to be honest. So I always say like land brooches is a really big project for me, maybe for the next 10 years. It's here. It's maybe for the next 10 years. So this is like a mom for some of my projects. But I still want to talk about this really quick because I want you to kind of understand the big background. Okay, yeah, I'll try to go quick. So this was inspired by the landscape of like Mexico and the west part of Texas. That was inspired by, that was the experience when I traveled with my friend to that area. After I went back, I wrote something to express the feeling I had. So the earth is a junk man and every object can be its brooch. Everything that happens to be nearby becomes its adornment, like a single dot marked on a white t-shirt, so plain that the mark itself becomes its meaning. So it's what I wrote after I came back. Then, so this is all still like the moon board I created on the Pinterest. I found this very interesting. Like I have been collect so many land arts pieces. If you're familiar with that, that's the art movement probably popular in 1960s. So the artists like using the land as their canvas. So also I found I haven't collected so many pieces with the circle in there. And I personally call this magic circle because you can see this, their canvas, they're endless. But after the circle was drawn, like there was some magic happen. The art was created because of the circle. So I call this circle boundary. So after we have this boundary, the art was created. So inspired by that, that was the first piece I made. It's a really small brooch. And it was made from the rocks and the copper wire and the stainless steel. Also kind of inspired by the land art piece over there. But after this piece finished, that was really fun to find that after I put this piece on my body, like I almost feel like this is like a mini land art piece, and it's transformed my body as part of the land. So then I have a really big concept, like I hope the brooches means the our artwork. Could they play as a role, as a medium to explore the connection between human nature? And when people wearing the artworks, they can feel like their body was part of nature and they could see the connection with human and natural environments. So this Black in Dark series was the keys of my lens brooches, and that was focused on the night views in Marfa, Texas. I especially focus on the night view because I feel like the night always gave me like a peaceful, like everything covered in dark. And then also you can really see the boundary between you and nature. And this is also like a poem I wrote. It's also in my studio if you want to look at it after. Then I was like, my idea was like, I'm going to create a big circle on human bodies and then to bring these human parts into the natural environments. So I have started with all these shapes from the mountain forms. That was because when I look at this picture here, the mountains in the distance, they separate the sky and the ground. So they feel like a belt. They're the boundary to separate the sky and the grounds. So I started with drawing all this mountain shape and then make them like waved them into this big circle shape. Then there was some like working process. That was the paper model. I always start with paper model and then transform it to a fabric piece. Also, I was thinking about the textures for that piece. I really like the grasses in dark. And this sentence I wrote on the palm that represent the grasses, because the grasses in dark, there feels like Asian creatures for me. You almost cannot see their movements, but you know they are moving slowly. So this is some like practice I did to represent the movement of the grasses. But I end up with this really simple line because I don't want to lose the freedom, the wild feelings from the grasses. So then that was the text piece from like here. But also I wanted to include some like human activities in that area. So I've been collecting all these black materials and use some like Legos buttons to represent the abandoned buildings, trashes left by human activities. They are all in black colors because that means that nature can embrace everything harmoniously. So that was the finished piece. And this picture was taken on the way me and my mom went to the Monument Valley. Yes. Okay. So I'll go really quick. So for the development I do here, it's like I kind of like cut the circle for right now because I was thinking like because I put the circle on a human body, it feels like I directly drag human body to nature, and I was thinking if I can just make some like change the circle to medium. Like to see this medium, you can find you are connected with nature, not just drag in there. So what I think is like, I'm going to create a medium makes you feel like nature looks like human beings and human beings like nature to deepen the connections between human and nature. So that was my project. So I have this legs, a couple of the like legs images find on the Pinterest, and also have this image of the trails. I kind of feel like they kind of has the similar shapes. So my sketches was combine those two shapes together. So like this necklace, the outline can be seen like a trails, but also looks like the legs. So to doing that way, it's kind of blurry the difference between human and nature. To give this the details, I also did some anatomy, right? Researches. So that's all these details came from the muscles on human legs. I also gave it with like a fluid shape, so you can maybe think that's also like the rocks or something from nature. So that was the working process. the techniques was called pattern making skills, a part of the fashion industry. So that was the main body piece was finished. You can see like this knee part will sit on the brace, and I do that on purpose because I want to do something fun for that. Then I had this com bra clothes as the inspiration. Actually, I did this test for many times, and now I have this final piece finished. So this transparent piece that represents the car lights breaking through the darkness. That also represent the human activities. Also, this this triangle shapes, they are connected with the main body with the magnets. So you can move it by hand to see the landscape without human activities, and put it on to see like the nature with human activities, how it looks like. Last project, really quick, is I started like Golden Age project right when I'm here doing the residency. So that was inspired by the old pieces from MFAH, mostly inspired by the South American craftsmanship, but also inspired by some like African piece as well. So those are three like main pieces inspired the following earrings. So they are all fabric pieces, but they're really lightweight, but you can see the connections. For this project, I was like want to bridge the gap between fashion, old craft pieces and arts. So you will see, hopefully you will see like hat pieces, like even like bow ties, even like belts, like under these pieces will be made in the following weeks. Last, this was my like birthday gift for my mom. And that necklace was to remember our memories in the Galveston Island. And that's it. Thank you so much. We still have question for.
Few minutes.
Okay, yes.
Then we'll take a few minutes, and then if not, people can go in Dongyi's studio after.
Yes, yeah.
Any questions?
Question, I'm kind of selfishly asking. You mentioned that the public library resources in Pittsburgh were really interesting. Were there any other public libraries that you use since you've done so much, both in China and in America, to kind of influence some of your research here?
Yes, for sure. Because but most of them like not just library, but also like museums. Yeah. I always went to the museum to see anything could inspire me. Yeah. Well, in China, well, actually, I didn't have a lot because I was born in a small cities. After I went Beijing, I have more access to like those public resources, so that was a little bit hard. Yeah. But for here, yeah, Pittsburgh was maybe the best one I have experienced. Yeah.
You have a great library school there.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah.
I have one about Tanya about your poetry practice. How
Yeah.
is that incorporated into your- I've referenced poems that you've made, but can you speak a little bit more about your interdisciplinary and poetry practice?
Oh, yes. So usually I actually started with writing form before I actually moved to the visual form. So it's always just like a novel or like a poem I wrote. Like the one I was talking about, where is it? But like when I look back, so this like the writing form is like a diary to record the details I probably could forget after times. So after I read back, I would see all the elements I mentioned in the poems, and then I would do the research and transform this writing form into pictures. So it's still like, because this is still like ongoing projects. So every time I look at all this like stars, like some like shining shadows, it reminds me something like it. So that makes this project ongoing. It's like the very like initial inspiration for this project. it is. Thank you.
Can you tell us a little more about the piece you are wearing?
Oh,
right
yeah,
now?
sure.
Yeah. Made the residency out there.
Oh, this one?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, this one was part of this project as well.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. I just didn't have the time to talk each of them. Yeah, but this one is actually between the first one and the last one. It was created between that time. So that was like that was also trails. So those are like what I remember is like this is like a trail, but this is like car lights cutting through the dark. So the half of it was white. And this is like maybe like a tree like blocked the lights. So that was the shadows. It was the shadows. So it was no like grasses on here. It was shadows, trees, and the trail. Yeah. And it just too like it's really lightweight, so it's only has like just a pin on the back. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Dongyi.
Yeah, thank you.
I hope you all stick around to check out Dongyi's studio after. Let me. full screen here. Okay, next up is Macon Reed. Macon is an artist working in sculpture, ceramics, installation, fibers, video, and social practice. Their work draws on their participation in queer, punk, and DIY communities that experiment with how we can and cannot consciously shape the world in which we live. Their brightly colored, large-scale installations combine studio and social practices to create temporary worlds that highlight undervalued histories and social issues. Macon completed their MFA at the University of Illinois in Chicago and their BFA from Virginia Commonwealth University. They studied physical theater at the Daw International Theater School, radio documentary at Salt Institute for Documentary Studies, and socially engaged art at the Kitchen in New York City. They attended residencies and fellowship programs at the Royal Academy of Arts in London, I-Beam Center for Art and Technology, and the Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture. And what might be one of the best perks I've ever had is I get to hold Frankie while you talk.
Yeah, thank you guys all for being here today. And also, Dongyi, it's so cool. We've been working near each other and now I get to know so much more about your work. And I also just like anytime a mom is in an artist talk, I get extra excited. So thank you. Hi, you guys. I'm Macon. I work in all of those things that Natalie just said. And usually when I do an artist talk, I get up here and I just like start speaking really fast and do this and try to pack a lot in. But because I knew today was shorter, I thought I'd try a new thing and just focus on 2 projects. They kind of do something a little bit different. And to be honest, I'm also a little bit jet lagged. So that might help you guys get a slower paced talk too, which is probably a good thing. So the first thing I'll say is that I work in all those mediums, but my favorite thing to do are these sort of large scale installations where I really combine sculpture with social practice or with relationship building in the work. And I see them as being inherently, they're equally important. So I'm going to show you guys first a project that I've been working on for 10 years that's had a lot of different iterations that will kind of eulogy for the Dyke Bar, which will kind of give you a sense of what my work looks like when I bring people in and I'm working with them really directly in the space. And then the other one I'm going to show you was during COVID, when I couldn't do that, how I had to figure out how to work. But one of the things that I'm always thinking about, I'll give you guys like an art to look at instead of the title while I'm saying stuff. But one of the things I always think about when I'm making work is really like, how can I be in service to the community or the world around me? Is there a conversation or a question that, you know, of course it's still selfish because I want that thing to be talked about or had, but I really think about like, how can I insert my practice in a way that could be useful? And so with this first project, this is the very first iteration in 2015 that I did. It's called Eulogy for the Dyke Bar. And essentially, for people who don't know, like there's been a slight uptick in what I'm calling dyke bars. We can call them lesbian bars, and really the language even over the course of the project and how I describe myself has shifted and changed since I started it. So just with the caveat that language is always important and tricky when talking about queer spaces, but essentially spaces that were for the dykier end of the queer spectrum. they've been closing in mass for decades now, and recently there are a few more, but to give you a sense of things, there are like less than 35 that I know of in a country of 331 million people. That's not a lot, right? And so I started asking myself and my community, like, why are these spaces not existing? In part because I was living in Chicago, where the queer neighborhood is called Boys Town, and I was just like, boys are cool or whatever, but it was just like, that's not for us, right? And so I started, asking, and I found a lot of different sort of ideas and stereotypes within the queer community about why that was the case. That our side of the queer spectrum didn't like to party as much, weren't as sexual, didn't like to go out, etc. And this idea that like we all just kind of want to hang out at home and bake bread and drink tea with our cats, which I always joke is like a great thing to do, but some of us want to do other things too, right? And so when I looked into it, I started talking to people, and that's always something in my practice. I start just talking to people. So it's a very like organic research process, but I found that a lot of people like would kind of blame us for it. And when I looked into it deeper, I realized there's a lot of socioeconomic structures and factors that lead up to the point where these spaces are going to exist or close, right? So some of those are just like, as we know, to use binary language, men and women make really different amounts on the dollar. And then you add any other identities that compromise that, and it kind of gets wider and wider. So you have a community that has a lot more money on the dollar and the community that has a lot less. And so things like that really impacted things. And also like there were some states in the country, at least, where you couldn't even order a drink as a woman if you didn't have a man with you. So there's all this control that's going around it. And so I thought, oh, well, what happens if I just like create this space so that we can talk about it? And this was a big moment in my practice for that. And also there was another element, which is kind of like, so I'm 43 and I live between a couple of really different schools of feminism and queer thought. And sometimes I feel sad that those two, the people who are younger and older than me, can't always understand each other. We've come a long way, but when I started this project, that was the secret part too, is like, I'm going to bring everybody into the room and not tell them that's why, and just hope that they like each other and talk. So anyway, what I did was I built what I considered like a version of a dyke bar into the space. This was a totally white room when I moved in, and this was such a great residency. I don't think it exists anymore. It was an artist-run space called Wayfarers in Brooklyn, and they let you just live in the gallery or like work in the gallery all summer. So I was my first time really getting to do installation where I didn't have to make things and then bring it somewhere. I was just making them, putting them on the wall. So all of this here is like hand-painted wood paneling with a wood graining tool, and then everything else in the space is made with, unless it's bearing weight, like these stools or something, it's made with cardboard that I cover with a layer of paper clay, which isn't people in ceramics talk about something called paper clay, but what I use is more like, it's like fibers that have a little bit of an adhesive mixed into them. And then basically I cover it with that, and then I cover it after it dries with a skim coat of joint compound, and I sand that down and seal it. And I always use this really bright color, which I can nerd out about a little bit later, but feels like basically like creates a really playful, open space for people to come into. So I made the space, and when you were in there during the day, it was just a space to contemplate, dyke bars and what they meant. But then when it was activated, it became a functioning thing. So it sort of like simultaneously represents a thing and then becomes a thing at the same time. And so this was such a crazy moment for me because I thought I was really alone in needing these spaces. I felt like I was the only person who was like feeling sad about them. And then suddenly I feel so lucky that this happened even once in my lifetime. Suddenly, all these people RSVP'd, and the space that normally didn't have more than 40 people had 1,000 people RSVP'd, and we had to literally do it twice and had a line around the block, and it was so overwhelming. So just say that not to be like, isn't it cool that I did that? But like more to be like, it's really amazing when you actually get to hit a need in your community and like be part of a conversation. That was like a really meaningful experience. So this next picture, I think, it's Shelley Weiss. So another thing that would happen, so it would become a bar where people could talk and things, but as I continue to do the project, I'll show you that I add more and more programming in, because that feels like it's really what makes the installation come alive. So that night we had I had collaborated with a group called Queer Memoir, who was already doing storytelling, which I always say is like, if you're working with community and you can find people who are already doing what you want to do and build a relationship with them that's mutually beneficial, that's always better than kind of starting it from yourself, or at least that's my experience. So we had basically people come in and just talk about their experiences in dyke bars. And it worked out so that a lot of them were elders, were older queer people, and a lot of the audience were very young queer people. So it was this really special moment where there were like a lot of tears and people had feelings and they talked to each other. And it was just so incredible. And I got to meet people like Shelley Weiss, who we unfortunately lost last year, but she's an amazing dyke activist for many years. And I just love, she's so sneaky. This is sort of a blurry thing, but I did this talk for years before I realized that she had this shirt that's along with everyone. Here I can point that out. But anyway, essentially so the installation exists and then we activate it. I'm so sorry for how blurry this one came out. It was a fail of a PDF magnification thing, but I wanted to show you, this is just like the scrappy space and the crazy line we had around the door. So in addition to the, activations of the space, I'll also have pull in some history into the room. And there's always, like, depending on the community that I'm doing it in, I'll have different archival images that are on the wall. And I always print them all black and white. So when you walk up, you can't really tell you can't tell what moment of history you're looking at for just a second, because I like people to have to like kind of sit through and figure it out a little bit more. But this is one of the images that was included in a few editions. And I love this because it's so rare and special to find images from dyke bars across history. For a long time, if you were queer and they caught you in the bar, they'd take you outside and potentially take your photo and put it in the newspaper. You could lose your family, your job, etc. So these spaces, these photos, these few ones we have are really special. I'd also have examples of things like this. Sorry, again, it's a little bit of a blurry projector, but like this is the Facebook post from Lila, who owned the Lexington in San Francisco. And that was for a while the only dyke bar that they had. And then at one point there were none in San Francisco, which I just like to point out because meanwhile there's a whole neighborhood for gay men. And we don't really talk about how important it is to share resources across the rainbow spectrum. So that would be, next to maybe a post from a bar owner from the 80s about why she was closing. You can see they're often the same thing. And news articles, things like that, because I just wanted people to have kind of a historic understanding of what they were doing. So that was Dyke Bar 2015. I've done it, I don't know, 6 or 7 times now. And this was the most recent one, which was like such an honor and so exciting. I got invited to Sydney, Australia, first to do the project as a group show, but then it was April 2020 it was opening. So, and then they invited me back for World Pride. And so for people who don't know, World Pride, it's a little like, whoa, it's a little overwhelming, but it's also amazing. People from all around the world, often countries that don't have access to a Pride, get to come there. And a lot of them get scholarships and things to be able to come. So it's really special. And what we did for that one, I'm going to say we, because I was working with a team of local consultants and curators for this. We got to redo the National Art Schools Cafe. So that way we weren't using a lot of new materials either. Like, I altered some of the surfaces, but like this silver and the booths and things were already there, which was really nice. And so basically, this is just to show you another version of it, but essentially it has the same sort of components of things you would have and use in a space. And you can see that here there was also a whole collection of Australia-based archival images on the wall too. So with this one, we had 11 programs over 3 weeks, and like 2,500 people come through or something. And part of that was because it was the only space like this for like the dykey part of the queer spectrum. I need to find a less clunky way to say that, but but there weren't a lot of programs even within World Pride, and so it became a sort of special space. And we had like regulars and people who really became part of the community in that short time. And again, every time I go to one of these places, I'm also a newcomer, an outsider, and with this one, I wasn't even from the same country. So I always work with people to try to figure out like what it needs to adapt or not based on the culture there. And one of the things that we had was this woman, Donna Ingram, who came and did a welcome to country that was specifically written. It was such an honor to have her do it, specifically written for this project, and talked about her queer nephew in the process. And so she basically is welcoming us. She's a Wajiri woman. She's welcoming us to the land, to the country, to be there. So that was how we started out the programming. There was so much stuff that we did, but I'm just going to show you a few things because it's a little overwhelming. But the space really looked very different depending on the thing. So this is like, we got to turn it into, I couldn't believe this. I was like, and they tried to take pictures of me, all the pole dancers, and I was like, they're all just like, they're looking really hot, and I'm like, in every one of them. But anyway, we got to turn the space into a strip club for the night, and this is one of the members, Basha, of Club Chrome, which is the first BIPOC-centered collective of pole dancers in Australia. And so we just wanted to acknowledge the history of sex workers in queer communities, because a lot of their ingenuity and performativity and things come into the space, and they're often written out of our history. So just showing you some examples of some of the programs we had. This was a group called Black Aboriginal Corporation, which is BLAQ. And they came in, and basically this is an example of like, they were speaking about something I really didn't know about. So I just handed the space, like it became theirs for the night over. And they talked about Aboriginal experiences in these spaces in Australia, and kind of compared notes across generations, which was really interesting. And I should say too, in case for cultural framework, like even the idea of what Blackness is really different in Australia in some ways than here. So sometimes people look at this and they're like, this is a panel of Black people. And I'm like, it's a different understanding. So I'm happy to answer questions to the most capacity that I have after, if you have any about that. But they came and spoke. We had a night dedicated to queer elders. So I was just trying to think about all the different groups that kind of get, to kind of really highlight them. And in this case, I can't remember who's who, but some of these people are some of these people, and I need to remember, but these are members of a group called CAMP, which was Campaign Against Moral Persecution. That was kind of like ACT UP a little bit in Australia, if I can make an equivalence there. And basically, this is from a night that was their Wednesday women's night at a friend's apartment, where they would make grilled cheeses and hang out and have like their equivalent, like there was no dyke bar yet. So we reenacted that, and we made grilled cheeses and called toasties, I think. We made grilled cheeses and we hung out, and we learned some from them. One of them came up and spoke. So, oh, yeah, I really did a short version. Okay, so I did a lot of different things in the space, and we had karaoke. We had people from the BDSM community come and speak. I just had a lot of different people come and basically try to make it as active of a space as possible for the community. And that's really the way that I feel like the installation is what brings people in and tells them, hey, you're somewhere different than usual, but it also connects to what they're something familiar that they know, and that makes them open up to having a different experience. And then it circles back to appreciating the installation more. So just really highlighting that understanding of where the craft and the social come together. How am I doing on time, Natalie? Okay, good. Water. Okay. So that was one project where obviously I got to relate to people a lot. Then we got to the pandemic. And so thinking about what is my role, what can I do to be useful towards some kind of conversation, I was thinking about how wild it was that all of us were living through this time where there were literally more human beings on Earth than had ever been in existence before. And there were more human beings thinking about their own mortality at the same moment, which is just like wild. And I was thinking about grief, and I was thinking about all the cultural frameworks that we do or don't have for dealing with these things. And then I leaned into thinking more about also our patterns of consumption, and how like sometimes unfelt grief, I think, kind of like makes the hungry ghost happen in us and makes us want to eat more stuff up. So I was thinking about all these different things, and this title is, I also use a lot of dad jokes in my titles, so sorry, but hello, Death, where have you been all my life? Was, I wish Sarah, is Sarah here? I don't think she is. Sarah, the curator here, who's wonderful, she worked with me on this project at the Center for Craft in Asheville, North Carolina, during the pandemic, and put it up. But basically, what I ended up doing was, since I couldn't really bring people together in a space as much, I started thinking about all the people who work with death and grief behind the scenes that we don't get to know about, right? And so I thought this is a great chance. Also, selfishly, I wanted to talk to them and hear what they had to say. So I started reaching out to people who might be able to tell us a little bit more about what we could do to change our practices around grief and death. So that was like, I spoke with death doulas, funeral parlor directors, grave diggers, my friend from middle school who turned out to be a gay chaplain in San Francisco. I didn't know that before this project. That was really exciting. So I just started speaking to them and just essentially being like, what do we need to know? What would you like to change? And just thinking about grief pretty broadly. And one of the other things I started thinking about with all the things that we grieve that we don't even necessarily acknowledge that we're grieving, you know, that aren't death. Death is really obvious that that's a thing we go through to grieve. So I made this altar that's kind of based on the St. Joseph's altars that we have in New Orleans. He's like the patron saint of the working class. And in New Orleans, there's this really amazing tradition of having all these altars and people go around on their bikes and look at them. So pulling from that, I made this altar that has lots of things that we grieve besides death on it. And I should say with this one, I was working really fast. Usually I make everything from cardboard or wood or something, and it basically starts from scratch. This was kind of like chaos ADHD mode, which I definitely go into sometimes. And these are actually I got them from the Restore, and they're just, I like that they're hotel ice containers that I just covered with material and then turned into these things. So for example, this is the HIV virus. I was thinking about all the people that we lost to the last pandemic. And also thinking a lot about, I should say too, a piece in this show and in other work I was doing about the pandemic was just learning about how these tiny viruses also help bring us into new periods of political and cultural structures. So like the bubonic plague, happy to nerd out about this after the talk too, helped bring in early capitalism for better or worse. HIV helped usher in queer liberation in a lot of ways. And the pandemic, we still, I think, are figuring out. So anyway, that's an example. This was for lost childhoods. So I was trying to think more kind of broadly, climate change, and then we had just lost the right to have an abortion. So that's what that coat hanger is for. This, I'm a chronic insomniac, so this is me thinking about like the hole where sleep could be, lost sleep, and of course, the Uvalde shooting had happened like right before the show was opening. So I made this tiny one to just kind of acknowledge that. Because all these things are huge and we just move on, you know, to the next thing. And what does it mean to not process them? So yeah, I learned a lot from that. And so in the exhibition, you see that altar, and then when you walk around behind it, there's this other sculpture, which was of this coffin, and you can't see it here, but there are chairs all around, kind of like set up like you would see at a wake. And people, if they wanted to, could lie down in this coffin. And from above, there was a speaker playing a like semi-serious, earnest, semi-funny meditation about death that I had written. So you could lie there in the coffin and kind of reflect on that. This is a blurry picture, but this is my friend MT who is doing that. And I think it does something different to see a body actually in there. And then one of the other things that was up there was this piece, which is called Time and Space to Grieve. And I never worked with this material before, so I feel like I notice these wrinkles that drive me crazy, but essentially it was muslin that I coated with house paint a couple times over so that it would kind of feel like it was paper. I really love it when people can't tell what things are made of. That's like a fun game for me. So this is made out of that and then glued together with fabric glue, but like hand stitched with painted stitch marks. And this was in response to something a few different people told me when I was doing those interviews, which is just to think about that, like, not everybody has equal access to grief. I never really considered that before, that like getting to see a therapist or getting to be with your kids or getting to have time away from your kids or all the different factors that come into it. Like grief is something that we all go through and then some people get more support around. So I was thinking about, I couldn't think of an object exactly that would be like, would make that happen in the world, right? But I wanted to bring it into conversation. So this piece is like a magical portal that you could like put down on the ground that would open up space, time and space for people to breathe. So this symbol here is actually a sigil. It's like a magical symbol that I made out of the letters that say time and space to breathe. And then just things like, you know, soup and sleep and hands to hold you, those kinds of things. So that was just to kind of bring that into conversation in the show. And then because I can't help myself, I still managed to have one public event in relationship to the show, which was pretty great. So this is Janet, and she is a herbalist who lives in the area. She lives right near Asheville, and she's been living there for years, growing her own herbs and teaching Appalachian traditional herbal medicine for a long time. So she came and did a workshop where everybody actually got to make their own grief tonics, which was really cool. So we learned about all the different medicines, and then actually got to leave with a cordial, which I still have because it's like too precious to use. So I still got to bring in some element of like a hands-on sort of tactile learning thing that you could take away from the show. But this project is just an example of kind of like, you know, a way of bringing in people and relational work, even if it doesn't show up in the immediate use of the space. I think that might be it. Yeah, that is all. Thank you. I'll do something funner to look at. Mhm.
You said you were gonna nerd out on color.
Oh, I forgot. I always forget it. Yeah, so you guys probably know that if anybody's gone to art school, a lot of times when somebody says like in our critiques, somebody will say, well, I did it because I like it. And teachers would always like nudge me as a student, say, well, why? You know, we want to know why. And so my honest first answer for a while was like, I just like these colors. And I was being lazy about it. And it took me a while to figure out there was something that felt like rebellious about them, like somehow is pushing against something, because a lot of people make work and they'll never get asked about their colors. And it's a really obvious, consistent, important part of my work, right? So I always did. And then I started learning, there's a book called Chromophobia that floats around a lot. And the author, David Batchelor, talks about the fear of color that emerges in Western art as industrialization is rising in Europe. And there's this way that color, particularly strong color, is relegated to being less than line and feminine and queer and extra and kind of decorative and not important, and you know, all of this stuff. So there's part of me that I think was just inherently was like, I wanted to kind of have it be so bright it almost hurts your eyes a little bit, you know, like aggressively bright. And I also was living in Chicago at the time, and I get sad when it's gray and dark and cold for a long time. And I would go to shows and there would be like just gray in the show and then gray outside. And I was like, so I think that there's part of me is just really hungry. Like they make my eyes feel alive and kind of wake up. And then there's also, I guess the last thing I'll say about strong color that I love is it kind of jumps out and affects you before your brain gets to know that that's happening. Like it affects you and then you can tell a story about how it affects you. But I love that it kind of can skip over that intellect a little bit. So those are the answers I've got so far on color. But yeah, it's my favorite. I love color. Yeah.
Related to color a little bit, but can you talk about the surface quality of the
Yeah.
color? Because all
Yeah.
it appears to be really matte.
Yeah.
You know, is that just in or?
Yeah. It's a great question, and people don't always pick up on that, but I really try to avoid any sheen at all. And I think it's because it just does something physically in the eye. It makes the color sort of brighter and stronger, with less surface to mitigate. And I think it's also, so it's an unfortunately expensive habit, but I use two things: flash paint for big things, which is flat, but even it has a tiny sheen. And then I also use, for smaller things, Holbein acrylic wash, which is like my favorite. You know, it's a really like high pigment color. And so, yeah, but I like that that it also kind of leaves the hand in it, because I like things that are a little bit lumpy. My friend calls sculptors like me lumpy sculptors. Like there's a category of us, but I like things that you can see that the hand was really there, you know, and I think the matte finish lets that pop through a little bit more. Yeah. Question. Yeah.
Do you have ways of working in the studio that are like not thinking about a larger social context?
Yeah.
Or not yet thinking about them?
Yeah, I try to do that sometimes because I think that's the thing that I'm feeling now as an artist, as someone who hasn't been kind of like doing work that can be commercially sold, these big installations and stuff, is that it often involves, like, you probably know this, but like a grant writing that you have to spell everything out when you're writing the grant. It's like, it's for these people, here's the thing it's about. And I found that over time, that's felt like it starts to limit the playfulness and the weirdness that can happen in the work. So that's actually something I'm trying to bring in now. And it shows up more in my videos, I think. But generally, there's always some of it in there. I'm like such a nerd for history and politics all the time. So I think about this stuff. Trying to think of other things. But like the work in my studio now is actually funny because people ask me what it's about, and I'm like, I don't know. And I actually like that I don't know. So you guys, if you come by my studio, you can see that was work that I was really just giving myself permission to play and get weird. And then afterwards kind of figure out what I was doing. Yeah, that's a good question. And oh, I think you had one and then you had one. Sorry.
So much interaction with the public. Is there kind of a moment for you where your work spins out beyond your control, where?
Yeah. I mean, there's a way where you never have full control when you're collaborating with people. And I should say something I do when I'm working with people is except in very rare situations where there's just not time, I meet with everybody one-on-one beforehand. And we have a conversation about like, what do you want to get from this? You know, what would be supportive? What are you concerned might come up? I ask them especially within the queer community for the Dyke Bar project, there's so many queers with so many feelings and so many different identities all intersecting. And like, you have to do a lot to be mindful of all of that. And so I'll also say, like, what do you want me to do if something happens you don't like? So I'm not trying to guess that. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that honestly kind of tries to mitigate some of where I would lose control in that way, you know? But on some level, like, you know, it's like there have been a few different versions where I just hand the space over and I don't even know what's going to happen in it. So I still have control in a way because I'm like, I know who's coming in. But I think that's where I think that happens more in my video work and in painting and things, because I feel like I'm just too aware that I'm like facilitating a space and inviting people in to these relational ones. And so I feel a lot of responsibility for that, you know, maybe it's control, which is what we're thinking about. But yeah, it's a good question. Did I answer it? Okay. And then
Yeah, so you didn't work on cardboard, but when you put a play on top, does it make the structure more durable?
yeah, yeah,
Can you survive elements or?
yeah.
More?
It depends on the elements, like nothing, I haven't figured out how to do stuff outside yet. I've done some things with like fiberglass for that kind of situation, but it's mostly the kind of the tree hugger in me that wants to work with the cardboard, and also I didn't know about having ADHD until I was pretty late, like 38 or 39 when I figured it out, but I like the quickness of it. Now I can kind of understand that my brain just likes to do that. But it does have limitations. So putting things outside is hard. But as long as I seal it pretty well and it stays inside in climate control, it's pretty good. And if anybody ever wants to try it, I'm such a fan of Sculpt-A-Mold. That's the specific brand that I use because it has a little bit of plaster in it, and some of the other similar products don't have that, and they take forever to dry, especially in the South. It's like they turn this really cool mold color that's like fluorescent purple, but it's not something you want on your work, I've learned. But yeah, it's great because the cardboard armature becomes the structure, and then it does make it a lot stronger. That on there. Yeah. Imani?
Okay, I have one question. So something that I noticed with your Dyke Bar project was it seems like the focal point is the pool table, whereas I
Yeah.
feel like, or if I'm gonna use Chicago's terms,
Yeah.
boy gays,
Yeah.
the focal point is like the dance floor.
Yeah.
Is there something to, like, why did you use that as your focal point?
Yeah, that's a good question too. I think in the case of the one in Sydney, we did actually have a dance floor, but we did all that outside, which I felt mixed about because it really changed it to not be dancing in the installation. I think that probably part of it is because it's an object I can make, you know, whereas like the dance floor isn't totally an object you can make. But also when I was interviewing all the people about their memories in Dyke bars, the pool table was like where all the action was historically, like a lot of fights would break out amongst what the butches generally. I call them short hairs now sometimes, even though that's like also weird, but there was always, there are all these stories about so-and-so like beating up somebody or falling in love or having sex or all sorts of things that would happen on the pool table. So it was like this sort of like weird source of intrigue and drama. So that's it. And then, but it's like hard to figure out how to have the dance parties when it's in there. We'll like move it out when we've done that. Yeah. One more here.
So I think with the Dyke Bar works, I was imagining the de-installation and the post-installation. I was wondering if that was something that you would talk about, if it's what.
Yeah.
If it is.
Ugh, it's really hard. Installation is really hard. Yeah.
Or the de-install.
Yeah, I guess I think it's like making things and yeah, but you're right, like the taking it apart. I mean, the first time I did it, even though we had all those people come, I had so little money. And I should say I started that project because I got hit by 3 cars in Memphis. It's a kind of crazy story, but I got hit by an uninsured driver. So I only got like $8,000 out of it. And I joke with people that if somebody's gonna like hit you, you should be like, wait, do you have insurance before? Because it makes a big difference. But so that one, I couldn't even imagine that anyone would want those things anymore, you know? And so I honestly just got rid of a lot of them, which then later I had to rebuild all over again and learned a big lesson from that. So it's tricky because I don't like to make all these big things and then have to pay to store them or to, you know, and I don't often sell them because they're big, crazy things. But like in Australia, the pool table, because we used a real one for that one, and then I just sort of sculptured it up a little bit. That one exists in the student center. There's like a queer trans student center on campus, and now they have a pool table. So a lot of times I try to like put them into the world however I can. Does that answer that question? It's just like, it's
Yeah,
always a
yeah,
tricky
that's-
thing of like, what do you do with the sculpture afterwards? I wish I knew. And I like to joke too that it's like the Dyke Bar project, except for maybe the Sydney version, it's a very authentic to a real Dyke Bar because it takes a lot of work and people say they love it and you don't make any money doing it. So it's like, you know, so that's part of that too, to deal with after, but yeah. Well, thanks you guys. I know you've been sitting here for a long time, so.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you all for coming today. Please go visit Dongyi and Macon in their studios, and we hope to see you at the next Artist Talk. Thanks all.